So let's say that you're at the stage where you're looking to buy a property that's worth $500,000, but you also currently have $500,000 inside your bank account. And you're now debating whether you should pay cash for the property, should you do a 15-year mortgage, or should you do a 30-year mortgage? During this video, I'm gonna be going over the exact mathematical breakdown on what is the best decision if you are considering the process of paying off your home very, very quickly. So let's say under scenario number one, you have the $500,000 and you just don't want to have a monthly payment. So you grab the $500,000, you pay off the house in cash, and now that means you pay no interest to any bank because now you paid off the property in cash. Now under scenario number two, you held on to your $500,000, but you got a 15-year mortgage. Now that means that your monthly payment, if you got a 5% interest rate, your monthly payment would be $3,953. Now remember, interest rates change all the time. So right now when you're listening to this, interest rates might be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, or maybe interest rates right now are at 3%. But if you look at overall, the average rate that interest rates have been on mortgages have been about 5 to 6% throughout the last 30 to 40 years. So now in that scenario, if you got a 15-year mortgage, throughout the 15 years, while you're making that $3,953 payment, you're gonna end up paying $211,000 in total interest. Now, under scenario number three, you said, okay, I'm gonna hold on to my $500,000, and then instead I'm gonna get a monthly payment over a 30-year period. Now your monthly payment is going to get smaller. Instead of paying $3,953, your monthly payment is going to be $2,684 a month. But now you do that for 30 years, you're going to end up paying $466,000 in just interest because you got a 30-year loan and you did not pay the house in cash. So now the question is, well, what do you do? Well, you see, most people will say, well, obviously you go and pay the house in cash. That way you don't throw away any of the interest. But there's one critical element that people don't stop and think about. Under scenario number two and scenario number three, the individual was able to hold on to the $500,000, and if they now have the ability to go and invest it in, for example, an S&P 500 index, which over the last 20 to 30 years, it's averaged over 10%, then under scenario number two, after 15 years, that account will actually have over $2 million in the account. That means that's over $1.5 million in just interest that individual has earned under scenario number two with a 15-year mortgage. Now, under scenario number three, the same exact situation where now the person invested the $500,000 for a 30-year period. After 30 years, the $500,000 account, if it's earning 10%, it would have grown to over $8.7 million after 30 years. But that means that's $8.2 million in just interest earned. So now I have to start asking myself the question, well, if under scenario number three, I got a loan for $500,000 and over the next 30 years, I throw away in interest $466,000, am I willing to throw away $466,000 in interest if I'm gonna make $7.2 million in growth during that same time period? And that is where you now have to make a decision on what is the best thing for you. Now, the reason why I see so many people that they want to have their properties paid off is because it brings them that peace of mind knowing that they don't have to worry about a monthly payment. Also, we also understand that the stock market is also something volatile. We understand that over the next 30 years, it might earn 10, 11, 12% on average, but we also understand that it's not going to be that every single year. You might make 1 year 25%, 1 year you might earn 10%, and 1 year you might be down 10%. And we understand that over time, we're going to average about that 10 to 12% return. Now, what is the other part that you also have to think about? If I go and pay off my property in cash, you also have to think about a few other points that maybe most people completely ignore. Number one, we don't have access to the money in our home, meaning if I go and pay off my home right now, that money is not available. I have to now go ask permission from the bank if they can now lend me my money back out of the money that I paid off. The other part that I have to think about is, what about liquidity, right? What happens if tomorrow there's a massive emergency, you now get laid off from your job? Do you have access to capital in that scenario, in that case? So if I have my investment portfolio, I know I can take money out of my portfolio to be able to confront those types of emergencies if I need liquidity. The other question is, what happens if there's a health emergency and now I'm disabled and now my family needs access to money to be able to cover some sort of emergencies? Well, at least in my portfolio, I know that I have access to the funds. if I paid off my home, now I have to ask permission from the bank to see if they're willing to lend me the money. But if I now am disabled, that means I probably don't have a job. And if I don't have a job, I don't have income. And if I don't have income, the bank is not going to lend me any money. So when you're making this decision on whether you should pay off your house very quickly or do you want to instead invest your money, just stop and think about all these factors, because all of these factors play a critical role in the decision of how you're managing your wealth. If you need any guidance on how to make these decisions better, or you need some financial planning guidance, please make sure that you reach out with us. We can gladly sit you down with one of our advisors and we can give you specific information on how you should be making better decisions with your money. Talk